Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this. This is the Whippet tank that we built recently. We're not actually going to be talking about this to start with, but we are going to be building the diorama that it and the figures that we painted before go on. So, let's get on with it. Yes, so we're going to start on this diorama, finally. What I've got here is a piece of foam. It's that expanded, insulation foam that I use. This is a bit I robbed from my daughter. She uses a lot of this stuff. And I've just kind of squared it off mainly and just tidied it up a little bit. And this is what we're going to use for the base of our diorama. Now, I'll be honest, I'm kind of winging this. Which I'm sure many of you will be surprised to hear. So the idea is I want to have the tank kind of in the background, or at the back, and have the figures in the front. And that's about as far as I've got so far. But I did have an idea, and what I want to do is have the tank in a building, specifically like an old wooden barn. So that's what we're going to start with. So to make the barn, I'm going to use this. Now this is 1/32 of an inch by 2 by 24 inch basswood. It's balsa wood basically. And yes, it's 1/32 of an inch, which I think is about 2 millimeters or something. Actually, let me just check. It's about 1 millimeter. So what I'm going to do though is I'm going to cut it up into individual planks, which is nuts, I know, but I think that's going to be the best way to do it. So I've already done a few, as you can see. So yes, let's just get all those out of the way for a minute. Yeah, I've done quite a few, but I need more. So basically, the way this works. This is 2 inches wide, but I want the barn or the building, the walls, to be 2.5 inches tall. So what I'm going to do is measure out 2.5 inches. I think it was 2.5 inches. Let me just double check that. Yes, 2.5 inches. I haven't got a huge amount of this stuff, so I don't want to waste it. So we'll do a couple more, because I've got enough there. There should be enough to do the sides and the front. So I need to do enough to do the other side and the back, if that makes sense. So 2.5, 5, and 7.5. And then we'll just put a mark on the other side at the same point. So 2.5, 5, and 7.5. And then we'll take a Stanley knife. I mean, you could do this with a modelling knife, but I'm just using a Stanley knife because I find it's just a bit easier. It's a heavier blade, it cuts through it a lot quicker. And we just go across like that. So we'll cut these off. I mean, obviously you can get like specialist tools for cutting this kind of stuff, but it's just as easy to do it with a knife. If you're doing a lot of it, then yeah. Right, we'll put that bit to one side. And now, I'll just do one of these. I'll do the rest off camera, but it's just to give you an idea. What we want to do is these boards are basically 1/8 of an inch wide, approximately. So just put that there and then make a mark every 1/8 of an inch. This is why this ruler is particularly good for doing things like this, because it's marked in 1/8 inches. And then do the same at the other end. And again, they don't have to be perfect, because I want this to look kind of rustic. And then we get our knife back, line up like that, and cut. Move it across. Like so. So I will cut up the rest of these, and then we'll go on from there. Right, that's those all cut. I might need to cut some more, but we'll do that later if we need to. I've now got a slightly thicker bit. This is 1/8 of an inch thick, about 3mm. And I'm going to use this to make the frame of the building. I'm not going to frame it fully because, you know, it doesn't need to. It's going to weigh nothing, but it's more just for to have something to stick those to. So I do have a little rough sketch that I did. So the building is going to be 4 inches long, 3 inches wide and 2.5 inches tall. So I need to make a frame for that. So I'm going to start with the gables. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a couple of pieces 3 inches long out of this, and then I'll split it afterwards. So I say I'll just do one to start with, and then we can I'll do the rest of them off camera. It's just to give you an idea of what I'm doing. These are just scraps of balsa wood that I've had floating around in the workshop for years. So, but you can get this stuff in like Hobbycraft and places like that. Right, now it looks like I'll be able to get just about get 3 out of this. They don't have to be exactly square, just near enough is good enough, as they say. What's that phrase? It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be done. Right, both of those. Hang on, I think, is this wider? Yeah, I think it's wider at this end, that's alright. So, same again. This is a little bit more awkward because it's a bit thicker, but still, we'll manage. Right, that's one. That's 2. Right. Now we want a couple of pieces 2.5 inches. Actually, we're probably going to need more than a couple. We might need, I think we need 4. So 2.5. Because the front end of the building is going to have a door in it. So I'm going to use this to frame the door as well. I'm going to mark that because that's not quite enough to make 4 out of, which is kind of annoying, but I suppose I could make them slightly narrower. I'll say they don't have to be perfect. You know, the funny thing is about balsa wood, it's actually a hardwood. You may not realise that, but it is actually technically a hardwood. But still, there you go. Now, I've actually made a bit of a boo-boo there because I've cut those either too long or too short, depending on which way you look at it. Because I want this to have an overall height of 2.5 inches, which means these need to be 1/4 of an inch shorter to take into account the thickness of the thing, which I helpfully did not do, but that's fine. So let's just measure like that, and getting them together. And cut them like that. There we go, that's better. Right, so the reason I've done 4 for this front end is because we're going to have a door, as I said, so I want to frame the door as well. So for glue, I'm going to use this. This is Gorilla Super Glue. This is good stuff. And this particular bottle I really like. This is a bottle that Bunny Kitten bought when she was over here last. But the nice thing is, you see it says that on their brush and nozzle. So if you unscrew the cap, you have a nozzle, as you would expect. But if you unscrew the whole cap, it actually has a brush. And the nice thing with this glue is it's quite gloopy. So the trouble is with the normal thin super glues is they, when you're doing things like balsa wood, it tends to just soak in and they don't stick very well. So this actually works a lot better because it's a lot thicker. So let's see if we can do this. So we'll put some on the end of there, like that, and we'll stick that like that. And then we'll do some on the other end, like that. And we'll stick this on this end. Like that. Now, the door opening, I'm just going to put that lid on because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to knock that glue over and it'll go everywhere. The door opening is 2 inches wide. So if I measure into the middle of this, which is 1.5 inches, and then go 1 inch to either side of that, there and there. Oh, try not to stick the ruler to the thing. And now we'll put that there. Like that. And we'll put this one on this side. Like that. There we go. Now we want a piece of this 2 inches long to fit in there so we can frame out the top of the door. So, and we'll have to figure out how tall we want this door. Right, let's have a look at the tank for a minute, because obviously we want it big enough so that the tank could actually get in there. 2 inches will clear. So we will put that 2 inches up from the bottom. So we'll just measure there. So it's going to be quite near the top, but that's all right. And there. Alright, we'll put a drop of glue there. Drop of glue on the other side. And then we'll stay. Oh, you're not going to stay, are you? That's it. Oh. Like that. Now we can take this piece and put it on the top. Put a bit of glue on all of these. And I'll turn that over because I want this to be flush at the front. A pair of tweezers might help. Right, and that is our doorway. And what I'll do is I'll build up the rest of the frame, and then we'll come back and we'll start thinking about putting some cladding on it. Right, so progress has happened. Let's just move it out of the way for a second. So that's the frame roughly done. At least not, I've got to do the roof as well yet, but I'll do that as a separate bit so you can see how I'm going to do it. But yes, I've done the frame, and obviously I haven't framed it fully because it's not a real building. It doesn't need to be. I did decide to add a second door to the side because the trouble is once the tank is in there, if that side was completely blocked in, it's very difficult to see it. So I thought I'd add a second door there. But I framed a couple of little windows as well. Well, actually, they'll be quite big windows considering the scale. And I've just started to put the siding on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish off all this siding, and then we will get started on the roof. But yeah, it's going very well so far. Right, so we're getting somewhere. I've done all of the siding on the building. I've left a few bits a bit long. That's to help position the roof later. But what I'm doing now is I'm just working on the doors. I've done a couple already. Well, I thought I'd just show you quickly how I'm doing it. So I've just cut the slats to the right length, and I'm just working on these cross pieces now. So I'm just using that one just to get them all roughly the same. Not that it really matters, but still. Right, now this is the fun bit. I'm trying to do this without getting glue all over the tweezers and or me. Right, and then we'll pop that on there like that. And then we'll put the other one at the top. So this glue has worked out very well for doing this because it's quite thick. I found with the thin stuff it has a tendency to soak into the wood rather than actually stick it together. So this stuff's actually better because it stays on the surface more. Right, and now what we want to do is make the cross brace. So I'll just line it up in the right spot. Mark it with a pencil. Just trim these bits off. Make sure it's about right. That looks about good. Oh, I'll say this brush comes in very handy for doing this kind of thing. I shall definitely be getting more of this glue. If anyone from Gorilla Glue is watching, feel free to send me a case of this stuff. Alright, and then we pop that there, and that there like that. And there we have a door. So what I'm going to do next is start working on the roof, and I've been cutting some pieces for that, but I'll let all this stuff dry and cut a few more bits, and then we'll start working on the roof. Right, so I'm just starting work on the roof, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the gable ends first. So I've just cut this beam here, and this I cut out of this block of bass. I don't know if it's basswood or basswood. I'm assuming it's basswood, like a fish. But anyway, so I cut a bunch of like beams out of that. So what I want to do now is create a gable end. Now I want to make sure I keep this in the right. See, this is why I left these bits sticking proud at the top here, because it gives me something to kind of butt that up against so that it stays in the right place. So what I want to do is make a couple of cross pieces to make the roof. Now, how tall do I make this gable end? That is the question. About an inch? I don't think we need too much of a pitch on it, do we? Right, let's find the middle of that. So that should be 3 inches long, which it is. So we'll put a mark there. And what I'll do is I'll use the markings on the cutting board. So I'll just line that up there. And let's say 20 millimeters. So we'll mark that, like that, and then that in there. The trouble is with this basswood is it's quite hard, and it's like cutting the thin stuff is easy, but this is a bit more tricky, so I'm using a razor saw to do this. Alright, that's that one. We'll cut that across there, and that across there, and that should work like that. So now in theory, in theory, he says, I should, with a bit of luck, be able to put that like that, and cut that like that. And now, hopefully, this will work. Might have to trim it a little bit, but we'll see. No, that's all right. And there's our gable, you see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make another one of these. I will panel them with the same siding as I did the rest of it. And then once I've done that, we'll look at how we're going fit them to the roof, and how we're going to make the rafters and the actual roof itself. Right, so I've framed out the roof. It's not particularly straight, but that's all right because, you know, it's an old barn. So what I've done, I don't know if you can actually see that very well or not, but on the ridge beam here, I've actually beveled the top edge of it so that it aligns with the gables. And the reason for that is I want to put the roof sheathing on next. And so by beveling it like that, it just means it will sit flat against it like that. So I was thinking about cutting this up into individual sheets, but there's going to be another covering over the top, so I'm just going to put it on in one piece because it'll be a lot easier. So we'll glue these on, and then once I've done that, we can look at what's actually going to go over the top, which I think you're going to like. We'll just put plenty of glue on here. I'll try and only get it on the right surfaces if I can help it. Right, now let's see if we can get this on without sticking it to myself and or anything else that it shouldn't be stuck to. Right, that looks about right. As you can see there, that's now sitting, oh, focus, come on. That's nice and flat on there. So I'll stick the other side on, might need to trim this side a little bit. The astute among you may have noticed that I've made a bit of a boo. I don't quite know how, but I have made a bit of a boo-boo with this. If you look at that, it looks a bit weird. And I don't know why, because I made all the pieces exactly the same. But this gable end, the front gable end, is 1/8 of an inch higher than the back one. I have no clue why, and do you know what? I don't care. It's an old barn. That's going to be my excuse for everything in this video. It's an old barn. So yeah, I really don't understand how that's happened, but it has. But never mind. It's as a wise man once said, it adds character. Right, make sure we get that on the bevel, and then down the I did think about putting some more rafters in, but you won't be able to see this very well from the outside anyway, so I don't think it's really necessary. Alright, let's pop this on. I might need to trim a little bit off of this, but I think it'll be alright. Like I said, it's going to get covered with something else as well, so... Right, and there is our barn to a certain extent. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to put some... we're going to put a nice covering on this roof to make it look a bit more barny, if that makes sense. Right, so I've just been working on the roof. I'll show you what I've done so far. There we go. So just some corrugated iron on the roof. I did actually check because I wasn't sure if corrugated iron would be appropriate for the period, but apparently it was invented in 1827, so there you go. So this is tin foil, just regular household tin foil. So I've cut a piece, just squared it off, and I've marked 1/2 inch intervals to give me the width of the pieces, because that seemed about appropriate for the size of the roof, or the scale. And to cut it, I'm using scalpel, but I'm using this curved blade. I think it's an 11D or something. But I found if you use a straight blade, it tends to drag and rip the paper, whereas this doesn't. But the trick I found is to start a little bit in from the edge and push it away, and then come back, and also just to hold it down like that. Sometimes you need to do it twice just to make sure you get all of it. Like that, you see. I'll just do a couple just to show you what I've been doing. Oh, look at that helicopter going over. Right. Now, we want to take one of these. They're quite difficult to pick up is the problem. There we go. Oh. So I'll put that one down like that. And the roof is 2 inches from ridge to eaves. So I'm making these 1 1/8 inches because I want a bit of overlap. So I'll just make a mark every 1 1/8 inches. Like that. And then what I've been doing is just getting however many strips I've cut. I mean, obviously there's just 2 here at the moment, but I've done up to 4 at a time before. And just gang them together like that. Obviously make sure the ends are level. And then cut them into the appropriate sized strips. Now this is where the clever bit starts, because I have this, and this is something that I just 3D printed, and I made it in Tinkercad, and all it is a flat base with a bunch of half round shapes on it that I stretched to give you this kind of corrugated surface. And basically what you do is take one of the pieces, put it on like that, make sure it's straight, put the other side on top, and obviously they'll be offset slightly, and just give it a little press like that, and there we have a piece of corrugated iron. I mean, the scale's not ideal, it's not perfect for this, but it's good enough for what we're doing. So then to put them on, got another one over here. Take our roof, and again, this is where the brush on this comes in handy. And what we do is just apply a liberal amount of glue, making sure we especially get the top and the bottom. Like that. And then take one of these, make sure it overlaps slightly and hangs over the edge slightly. Drop it into place and just very gently push it down. Like that. And then take the second piece and lay it over the top like that. And there you go. So I will carry on and do the rest of this roof, and then we'll come back and see what it looks like. Right, so that's all the roof panels on, and I've just capped it off. I just put a ridge cap on. That's just a straight piece of foil that I just glued on. It's not quite in the middle, but again, it's fine. So what I'm going to do now is put this aside to dry, and then I think we can start thinking about putting some finish on this thing. Right, so I've just given that a coat of grey primer, just a normal high coat. And what I'm going to do now is give it a quick lick over with this German red brown from Vallejo. I want to make the roof rusty, and this is always a good base for that. Right, now I'm going to do some highlighting with this orange rust. This is Vallejo Model Air. This is actually out of a set. It's this rust stain and streaking set from Vallejo. So this is just to give it some highlights, or rust stains. Basically what I'm going to do is just go around the edges of the panels. There you go, like that. And the last step for this bit is some acrylic clear lacquer. Right, that varnish has had a chance to dry now. So what I've got in the airbrush is just some water, and I'm just going to mist very lightly over the whole thing. I just want to get it just damp. I don't want it wet as such, just slightly damp. That should probably be enough. And then in this little pot here, I've got salt. And I'm just going to sprinkle it on. Like so. I might want a bit more water on it actually. Might not be quite damp enough. That's probably way too much now. And the salt will stick to the water. This is an very old method of chipping paint. The one real issue with this is you don't have a huge amount of control over it, but it does work. And when you're doing something that's quite delicate like this, it can actually work quite well. And it also allows you to chip a large area fairly quickly. So we'll let that dry, and then we'll put a colour coat on it. Right, now we're just going to go over it with this XF7 flat red. Like that. Right, now with that's had a few minutes to dry. What we're going to do is take this, this is just a little toothbrush, one like a travel toothbrush, just an old toothbrush, and just basically scrape off the salt. Sometimes if it's difficult to get off, it can help to wet the brush slightly, but I think this is coming off all right. What can happen with salt chipping, and you can see it down here, it's actually discoloured the paint, and it's where the salt has actually dissolved into the paint. But in this instance, I actually don't mind that, because I want the paint discoloured and looking nasty. Right, that looks all right, doesn't it? Yeah, I think that will do us. I'll give it a little bit more, and then we'll go on from there. Right, now on this bit of cardboard here, I have just squeezed out, pardon the expression, on the left there we have this cadmium orange, and on the right we have yellow orange. These are both Diorama graduate oil paints. I could have used my cheap ones, it's just these ones were to hand, so that's why I'm using them. And I need a suitable old brush. This one will do. What we're going to do is just use a mix of the two of these. And just go around and add some blobs and bits and bobs here and there. And then we'll streak them. They won't show up terribly well against the red, but at least we will know that they're there, won't we? And they do add a certain what's it to the whole thing. It's usually a good idea, if you can, to leave the paint on the cardboard for a while, because you see the oil is soaking into the card. Right, I won't do all of it, I'll just do a bit just to show you. And then we take a suitable brush. This is actually a makeup brush. They're perfect for this kind of thing because they're doing exactly what the design do, which is blending. So what we want to do is start by going down like this, basically following gravity, just very, very lightly. And then basically the trick I've found is to go up. And it actually leaves some surprisingly realistic looking streaks. But we can always add more paint or wipe more off. This is why I do it over a gloss surface, because if you're not happy with it, you can just wipe it off completely. But this isn't looking too bad at all. So like that. So you see the difference between this half and this half. So I'll go around and do the rest of it. I might add a few extra colours as well. I might put a little bit of green and stuff on to simulate some moss. But I'll go around and do the rest of it and we'll see what it looks like. Right, so I just wanted to, I've basically done one side and I just wanted to give you a comparison. So that's the side that I've just done. It does look a bit leery on the camera. I hope it actually comes out looking all right. But if you compare it to the other side, you can see that looked quite plain. but this side now looks a lot more grotty. I did add a couple of extra colours. Basically, that's this one here. If you remember my Crawford and Black oil paints, that I used a couple of those. So that's basically orange, which is the same as the, you know, orange yellow from, you see they're the same colour, but and then there's also yellow and sap green. So the sap green I've used just to go round under the edges and things like that, just to make it look like a bit sort of mossy, or well, not mossy so much as mouldy, you know, like algae. So that's the idea behind that. And I find these cheaper paints actually go on a lot better than the more expensive ones, because the more expensive ones have got too much oil in them. But anyway, so there you go. I'll get on and do the other side, and then when it's finished I'll seal it with some matte lacquer, and then I think we can start on the wood. Right, so now the roof is done. Obviously I've got to do the wood, but that's what we're going to do now. Put that to one side for a minute, and we're going to turn our attention to said wood. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this door just because it's easier to keep it under the camera, and then I'll do the same effects with everything else. So to start with, we're going to use an oil wash. So I've got here some burnt umber. This is the Diorama graduate oil paint, and we'll put some in this little container, and we'll add some white spirit, and mix it up. We want this quite thin because we want it to soak into the wood, but we can also, you know, thicken it up if we need to. Right, and now we'll put some of this on here. Just basically just cover the whole thing. And I think what I'll probably do for the inside of the building, I might just literally just do this, because I don't think it'll need any more than that, because like I say, you can't really see the inside of it. This is where you need to be a little bit careful when you're doing things like this, is because what you don't want to do is get the glue everywhere, because the glue will stop the stain from soaking into the wood. Right, that'll do for the first coat. We might give this a couple of coats actually. Like that. Right, so that's I've just dried that off with a hairdryer a bit. And in this palette here, I've got some yellow ochre and some of the sap green. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over the boards a little bit, more in the middle than anywhere else. And I've just thinned this down a little bit. And I'm just going to go down like the middle of the boards just to lighten them up a little bit. Right, like that. And then we take a bit of kitchen paper. Just got a little scrap of kitchen paper here, and I'm just going to just work it in a bit. Like that, you see. Again, it's quite a subtle effect, but it works. And now we'll take this sap green and what we want to do is get it quite thin and just do a little bit along the bottom here. Again, just to kind of simulate mould. So put some on and then just wipe it off, because you can always add more if you want to. So, and just let it soak in for a second and then just wipe it off again. And if you want to go, you know, you can put it anywhere you want. I'll say it's mainly at the bottom because that's where it would get wet. Because obviously when the rain hits it, it would run down. and so the bottom of it would be wet more than the rest of it. And there we go, you see. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to let this dry, and then we're going to hit it with a little bit of a dry brush just to pick out some of the highlights. Right, so I've just got some acrylic here. This is latte, but it's just a pale colour. So we'll put a little bit in here. But you could use any light coloured acrylic paint will do. And what we're going to do is just give it a very light dry brush, just across the grain like that. Like that, you see. So I'll dry brush the rest of this, obviously do the rest of it. I'm then going to seal it again with some more matte varnish, and then I think we can wrap this up. And here is our finished article. I'm quite pleased with how this has come out, I have to say. It's been quite a while since I scratch built anything out of like balsa wood or anything, and this has come out pretty much exactly as I wanted, which is quite good considering I really went into this with no real plan at all. But yes, it took a lot longer than I thought it was going to build this, but that's okay. So the next step is to put this onto the diorama and actually get the diorama finished. So that's what we'll be doing in the next video. So hopefully you've enjoyed this, and as ever I'd like to take a moment and thank my top tier patrons, Howard, Amy and Hawaii Clive for their continued support, and of course all my other patrons and channel members and all you lovely people at home. It's very much appreciated, thank you. And we'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.